and welcome to this, the Lent and Easter Sometime Organist, a collection of easy pieces I've arranged for pipe organ solo. This follows on from the original Sometime Organist, and the idea is to get organs played and create new organists. Normally for Lent, Easter, we give something up, but instead we want you to take up the pipe organ. Many of these churches and buildings all over the world with pipe organs are not being played, and if you've got some keyboard skill, you play the piano, you can add the pedals and learn to use the stops and everything else. This book of pieces I've arranged is available from my website. The web address is in the screen now and underneath this video, and I give you all the pedalings and fingerings. And from the original Sometime Organist series, it's great how many people have been in touch to say they've started playing the organ, they've retaken it up, and they're also going playing at churches. And it's great how so many people have really enjoyed having the fingerings and pedalings and the tips on registration. So today we're just going to do exactly the same thing. If there's anything you're wondering about, the pedal technique and things like that, go back to the How to Play the Pipe Organs book 1 and 2 and the original Sometime Organist. The links are on the screen now, and that'll give you all those tips to follow on leading to this. I've made them very simple. There's a few challenges along the way, but I want you to improve as well. I'll give you all the options as we go. And we've got a beautiful 2-manual tracker mechanical action organ here, built in 1995. And I think it's fair to say, apart from the organ builder, David Wood, I know this organ better than anybody else because I was the first organist here in 1995. And I used to come and practice here 6 or 7 hours every single day of the week. A beautiful instrument, and it's wonderful to be back here to demonstrate this music. Only 14 stops in total, but we're going to get as many sounds out of it as we can. Now, the music is for Lent and Easter, as I say. It can be used for weddings and funerals and just general repertoire as well. And I'm not going to follow it through in not particularly the order of Lent and Easter, but there's some great music in here. I'm going to start with one of those pieces which everybody knows and perfect for this time of year. Spring from the Four Seasons by Vivaldi. Now, we'll start with quite a simple registration on here. Start with 8-foots. Always play as you're pulling out stops. 8-foot flute, 4-foot flute, 2-foot flute. That's nice on the swell. Same on the grate. 8-foots, 4-foot, 2-foot. We'll couple it together. Couple it through to the pedal. And add the pedal 16 and 8. I'm not going to add grate to pedal because this will be a quick trick of how to change sounds across manuals without having to change stops. Let's give this a try then. A really effective piece which is useful for all occasions. And when you've finished, press cancel. Nobody wants to hear you accidentally knock the keys when you turn around at the end of a piece. Cancel it, and then you're not going to accidentally press the notes down at all. Next, a meditative piece, really. This time of year needs lots of different pieces for different occasions and different moods, but not always quite so depressing, maybe. They can be very sort of uplifting and meditative. So I've arranged Ave Verum by Mozart, and we can have a nice little organ solo of this on a principle, but we can change stops on this instrument. I've got thumb pistons here. I've set them up as a crescendo, so 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then on the great, 1, 2, 3, 4. They operate the pedal as well. So you'll see me using them throughout this, but you can keep them on the same sound if you want. I'll give you a bit of a demonstration of how you can use these. So, for example, if we start with this solo with the right hand on the great, couple the swell through to the great, and we'll use a soft 8/4 as the accompaniment, then a soft pedal, 16. I think we're ready to go with that. I'm going to use the box a little bit. You don't have to. You might want to keep it half closed or half open just for this piece. But you'll see as I go along with the shots you've got here how I'm using it, and I'll include all that in the music as well. A very gentle piece, and you can use it on a very simple registration if you want. Now, at Easter time, we'll need some hymns as well. I'm going to give you some fairly simple ones. In the past Sometime Organist and the Christmas Sometime Organist, I've given you some hymns with different options, and you can use those again. Here, I've arranged it so you can play it on one manual, but also the right hand will be able to take a solo on a different manual if you want. If you're playing in a church like this with a big acoustic, you don't want to be too legato. You want to keep quite articulated and quite a large volume. And if you can change stops, what you can do is play the introduction on one sound and then add something, even if it's only maybe a mixture when you come in for the actual verse. So I'll do that now. I'll keep quite a big sound, full swell here, 8/4-2 trumpet, 8/4-2 on the great, all coupled together, swell to great, and then through to the pedal as well. I'll play the introduction and then I'll just add the mixture for the congregation to join in. I'm going to play Rockingham, When I Survey the Wondrous Cross. then for a different verse, you could put the melody in the tenor, and I've written it out with the accompaniment in the right hand and the tenor melody in the left hand. What you want to do for that is take great to pedal off when you've finished the verse, and then play the left hand on the great, right hand on the swell. So I'll show you that now. Etc. And then when you need to go to the final verse, just pull great to pedal out and back to full organ again. Now, in the Lent period, you want some very sort of moving pieces as well. When I used to be organist here, we didn't have a choir, so every week before the church service, I would always play 20 or 30 minutes of just organ music to set the mood for the service ahead. And when I was learning, I would have loved pieces like this just to play and learn with the fingerings and pedalings in simplified versions. They're quite hard to find. And one of the pieces I always loved was Lacrimosa from Mozart's Requiem. You might think that sounds a bit ambitious, really. The pedal is quite articulated, so it's quite straightforward, and I've made it so that you can play it on a 2-manual instrument. You don't necessarily need to change registration, but I will do as I go along to make the most of this piece, and I will include the registration changes in the music as well. A very famous piece. I'm going to begin on the swell with this very famous... There you go. And then we'll move to the great, and I'll use the 2 8/4s, the flute and the diapason. We'll couple it all together. No great to pedal at the moment. We'll swell to pedal and swell to great as well. And I'll use the box just to shape the sound. Try it and see what volume it is, and then bring the box in, open it if it needs to balance, or however you feel. Amazing how effective such a small number of stops can be when you add and subtract them just very gently as you go along, especially with such an amazing piece. Now, these sort of mournful pieces are very useful in Lent, and I've got a brand new one for you by my brother Tom Scott, who's written a piece especially for this Lent and Easter sometime organist. It's called Gethsemane, and of course reflects Jesus' time in the Garden of Gethsemane and his agony and struggle during that time, and reflects that mood. There's many ways you can repeat it if you want. I've included repeats as well. It's quite simple, especially for the pedal, but it's very effective on an organ like this. We're going to start with some very sort of simple sounds at the beginning. There's a solo melody in the right hand, and then the left hand. I'll add the string as well on this, just to give it that shimmering effect. And the pedal's just going to be 16 and 8 coupled through, and we'll have great to pedal coupled through as well. And I'll add them as I go as well with different stops. And I'm just literally doing the stops as if I've sat down at this organ. I haven't actually run through these pieces completely at the instrument. I'm sort of making them up slightly as I go to see how it feels in the church. It's a really liberating thing to do, as long as you keep track on where you are up to, especially have you got great to pedal on or off, and where is the thumb piston for it, or toe piston or lever as well. Keep watching and we'll see what we can do with Tom's new piece, Gethsemane. There you go, a very effective piece, which you could use, make it longer, shorter. You could repeat the whole thing again, I guess, if you wanted to. And there's many occasions, during church services especially, where you sometimes need to do that. Now, back to more Easter hymns now. The Day of Resurrection, a very well-known tune. Again, I've given us a simple version and simplified the pedal for you as well. Again, we'll do the introduction and then add some stops for when the congregation come in. This time, I'm going to start with just the principals, 842, and then add the two reeds. I've got a chroman on the great and a trumpet on the swell, and I'll add the reeds for the congregation this time. Save the mixture for maybe the final verse. So here we go. The next verse, you could just knock the reeds off again. There you go. Another verse, you might add full swell and close the box. Just adds a bit more colour to it with the trumpet inside the swell box. And then the final verse, maybe full organ. So you can do that and make sure you give yourself time between verses to change the stops as well. In the same key as that, a piece which could be used for many, many different occasions. César Franck, a piece from Organist, a set of pieces for a harmonium. Now these often confuse organists because harmonium stops don't appear at the pitch they're written. So I've chosen you a Poco Lento from the C major suite, the very first set. Now in this piece, it's written in bass clef and treble clef, so I've written it out for an organist to play. And if you play what's on this is what the harmonium version would sound like. You don't have to change registration during this piece either. I'm going to choose the strings, which would be a solitional or gamba, very thin sort of sound, and then a celeste sound, which usually tuned sharp, might be tuned flat. You never know what you're going to get, but gives you that beautiful wavering sound as well. On the great, I'm going to use this chimney flute, couple the swell through, swell to pedal, and then a 16 on the pedal as well. And I'm just going to use that, and I'll use the swell box as well to shape it. And I've given the hairpins during the piece as well. a really useful piece for lots of occasions and very nice to play as well. Now, a very famous piece associated with the Lent period. There's lots of requiems really, but Brahms, a German requiem. I'm going to play you the second movement in a very abridged, simplified version. Great for a sort of quite a mournful processional really. Has this very simple bass part. Before the melody comes in, and we can use a left hand on the swell, and I'm going to use the trumpet for this. So 8-foot flute, 4-foot flute. With the box shut, it gives quite a sinister sound in a way. The great is going to be the principal 8 and the chimney flute 8. And then the pedal, 16 8 flues, swell to great, swell to pedal. I'm going to build up during this as well. You could leave it on the same sound and just use the box to open and close to give the crescendo, but we'll just keep it like this for now and add a few things as we go along. So this is the second movement from a German Requiem by Johannes Brahms. a brilliant piece of music and really effective on the stocks of this instrument. Very useful as well and quite easy because your feet just move left to right. Speaking of feet, always make sure when you play the pedals you don't wear outdoor shoes. Have some shoes just for playing the organ, something soft, use the insides of your feet. Today when Tom and I arrived here we had to clean off a thick layer of dirt because someone must have been playing this instrument with their outside shoes. Mud, all sorts of things all over, and it's terrible. We've managed to clean it up the best we can, but try and avoid that. It takes the finish off and you can feel your pedals when they're nice and smooth and shiny, and you can get a nice sort of freedom as you play as well. When you're using rubber, which grips, that's no use really. In the next piece, though, we've got some very simple things. We're moving from left to right foot around the pedal board, but quite easy. A very famous piece by Vivaldi, the slow movements from his A minor concerto. A great way of using a nice solo flute sound. A thin left hand solitional or gamba. Box open. There we go. We'll couple that together, swell to great. Swell to pedal as well. And then we'll have the 16 on the pedal as well. You can decorate this as well with trills if you like. I've given them in the score along with all the fingerings and pedalings as well. But if you don't want to, you can just add a little grace note, as I'll do now on a few occasions. So this is the Largo from the A minor concerto by Antonio Vivaldi. They're a very easy piece to play on two manuals with a solo sound in the right hand and a nice accompaniment in the left. Now, a chorale arrangement now by Tallis that I've done for an organ solo. A simple pedal and left hand with the melody in the right hand. There's various ways of doing this. It's a very famous melody. You'll know this. So one of the ways we could do this is to prepare an accompaniment on the grate of something like a flute maybe, and have a sound on the swell, which is a bit oldie-worldy. Now a trumpet. Now if you have an 8-foot trumpet and a 4-foot flute, it has that sort of slightly gapped sound, which sounds very old-fashioned. I think it's a good sound. 16/8 on the pedal, swell to pedal, and you'll see why I've prepared the next sound in a moment. I'm just going to play this on the swell for now. So an 8-foot trumpet and a 4-foot flute, coupled through to the pedal with a 16-foot in the bass. that can then repeat, or you can just swap couplers, swells pedal off, greats pedal on, right hand onto the grate, left hand on the swell, left hand an octave lower now. So I've just swapped the parts. The right hand is now playing the lower parts and the left hand is playing the melody an octave lower. I've completely written that out. You can then go in the last verse to something very soft, maybe a flute or something on the swell only. A very versatile piece of music to use, which leads nicely into our next one, a processional to Calvary from the Crucifixion by John Stainer, a very famous choral piece. Well, this I've arranged for organ solo. I've abridged it as well, so you've got a nice little processional. Sometimes you need pieces like this on Good Friday. There's parts of the service where you need to play while the processional is happening, and this is quite easy to adapt. I'll give you some points where you can start and stop it and cut it as well. I'll start with quite a simple registration. 8s on the swell, 8-foot flute on the grate, swell coupled through, 16/8 on the pedal and the swell to pedal as well, and I'll add as we go along. I won't do the repeat for now, I'll just go straight through it, but there's various options you can do. You could stay on the same stops all the way through. It doesn't need to have such a big crescendo. And in the same key, one of the most famous Passion chorales by Bach from the St. Matthew Passion, known as a hymn as well. I've done your arrangement for organ solo, first with the melody in the right hand and then with the melody in the left hand in the tenor in this version. We'll keep it quite straightforward. 8 and 4 flutes, the right hand on the principal, swell to pedal, swell to great, 16 and 8 on the pedal. And I've simplified the bass line for this, so the pedal part is quite easy to play. You could then add a 4-foot in the left hand, 4-foot principle, right hand on the swell. And then for the final verse, both hands could be just on the swell together. A very useful one to play in any church service or just for your own enjoyment. Now another great piece from another Requiem, Fauré's Requiem, the Pie Jesu, famous soprano solo line. I've simplified this version, transposed it into C major. It's got a couple of tricky moments and it helps you do some legato fingering of moving your fingers on the same notes. If you don't, it doesn't matter. You can move, if you want to, just note by note with the same fingers. If you've got a nice acoustic like this, that's very easy. Always trust to give yourself some space in a nice acoustic. But with this, we're going to have an accompaniment and then a nice solo. And we will use the principle. 16 and 8 on the pedal, swell to great. I'll add a couple of things as I go, but you don't need to really add anything. You can use the swell box if you want to crescendo and decrescendo. A really nice piece to be able to include, whatever the occasion, I think. Next, a chorale melody from a figuration by Johann Sebastian Bach. I've taken the original bass line, figurations from the figured bass, and the melody of Komm süßer Tod, Come Sweetest Death, perfect for the Lenten season. I've harmonised it myself. I'm going to give you a few registration ideas for this. There are 2 verses I've given you. Again, one with the melody in the right hand, with an accompaniment in the left hand and pedal, and then one with the melody in the tenor in the left hand, with the accompaniment in the right hand and pedal. They're both slightly different. This is a great one to use some beautiful string sounds. A flute on the great, strings on the swell, soft pedal 16, and we'll add some stops as we go, and I've notated these registrations in the copy. So that's one verse, but then you could add the strings 8, 4 and 2 and a 4-foot principle in the left hand and the other way around. And that could stay to the end, maybe add the swell trumpet part way through, but a really effective way. And then you could go back to the beginning and just play it on the soft strings, depending how long you needed to make it last. Now, as we approach Easter Sunday, we need some very grand music and big introductions and maybe fanfares. But one of the pieces I think is one of my favourite pieces of music, which is very hard to include in concerts, is the little sunrise section from Let There Be Light in Haydn's Creation, which leads perfectly into Jesus Christ is Risen Today, the hymn. So I'm going to put the two of those together for you now. Now, this is an exercise in crescendos. We're going to start on the soft eighths of the swell and build up to full organ for the hymn. Let's see how we do it on a little organ like this. then go and vary the different verses. I've given you a verse which uses a few more notes between the hands, so you're not so much right-hand solo as a second alternative version, but just vary the registrations, knock the mixture off, the reeds off, and then bring them back up for the final verse. I hope that's helped you get some really good repertoire. Whatever you use it for, whether it's Lent and Easter, weddings, funerals, or just for your own enjoyment, I hope this book of pieces is helpful to you. And however you play them as well, you might want to print out individual pieces to have them in certain orders, play them off a tablet or another device of however you're comfortable. It's a PDF digital book which you get available from the website. The address is on the screen and below this video. And I hope you enjoy playing it. Give me your feedback. Let me know what pieces you'd like in the future or what pieces you would like to play. And I hope you find a way of adding the pedals and learning to play the instruments, and go out and do it. And do let me know if you do as well. It's always wonderful to hear from so many people who have taken up the challenge of becoming a sometime organist. And to finish with, you'll need your big voluntary for Easter Sunday. So I'm going to go back to César Franck's Organist, a sortie, a big piece in C major, and it'll give you some little challenges in the pedals. These little pedal figurations you can play with your left hand if you want to, and a lot of the pieces in this you can play on one manual. I'm going to play this on one manual on this occasion, and I will include the pedal parts as well. But I'll give you all the information in the book of what you can miss out and change. So thank you for watching this today, and this is the Sortie in C major by César Franck.